Anyway, welcome to the last session of the day. Thank you for waiting. Are you nuts? It's 4. It's nearly after time. It's late anyway. So you've done very well staying this long. Anyway, I don't want to waste your time. Can I come down? Is that too low?
No.
Are you sure? Put your hand up if it's a problem for you. I want to talk to you about something which is very, very dear to my heart, which is behaviour. Behaviour in schools particularly, not just behaviour in general. And it's something I've been kind of obsessed with for the past 10 years. Ever since I taught my very first lesson, when somebody started to deal skunk in the classroom, which I believe is a drug of some form. So I'm told. And I realised very quickly that most teachers were coming through the profession with very little training in behaviour management. Can we have that door shut, please? Is that okay? Can we shut the door now? And I realised after 3 years after that school leaders had even less. Is anyone here a school leader of some type? You know, like a middle leader or upwards and so on? Anyone here a head teacher or a principal? Just a few skulking there with their entourage. All right. So anyway, I mean, the thing is, this isn't just a teacher presentation, because I could do a million of them. This isn't a series of top tips. This is research. So I have to try and convince you to some extent that I've got an evidence base behind what I say. So I'll try to persuade you as we go along. Is anyone here? Has anyone come to the session looking for tips? Has anyone here got a difficult class? Right, okay, there's a few. Alright, interesting. Okay, so, about 3 years ago, the Secretary of State for Education in the United Kingdom asked me to be the behaviour advisor to the Department for Education, or behaviour czar, as the press politely described it. Unlike a czar has power and autonomy and a budget. I have none of these things. But it was essentially asked to advise. It was also an unpaid role, which is important. It means I could say what I wanted. You know, it wasn't a political role. It wasn't grace and favour. And they asked me to, well, first of all, they asked me to do 2 things. One, how should teachers be trained? And we published a separate document about that. And then after that, I said I would love to investigate what the most successful schools were doing from a leadership perspective to create good learning environments for pupils. Because we realised very early on that probably the biggest lever in a school is the leadership when it comes to maintaining order and promoting good behaviour. And then something else occurred to me. The more we looked into it through this report called Creating a Culture, the more I found that very effective leadership of a school was very similar to very effective running of a classroom. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised with it. Because one of the overwhelming conclusions we came up with was this, and I'm happy to jump to the conclusion for you right now, which is this, is that the most effective teachers and schools consciously think about the whole room that they're trying to teach and think, how do I run the behaviour here? Or how can I make an impact on the behaviour here? And the problem is that most schools have got a very reactive model. Most teachers and most schools have got the same problem, which is that they react. Let me fix that, sorry. I've got too many things in my hand. Oh, that's so much better. I can think so much more clearly. I can gesticulate there. That's brilliant. Most teachers I see going into a classroom, oh, that's making such a difference. Thank you. Most teachers, they go into the classroom now, because they're not particularly trained about how to run a room, they make it up as they go along, which I think is scandalous. I look at a lot of teacher training around the world, and nobody's really cracked this yet. And I'm sure in the Netherlands you have the perfect teacher training. No, I'm sure, a bit more patriotic please, I'm sure you can all manage your classes perfectly, because I'm sure you've been expertly trained in the matter. Well, I wasn't. You know, and I got a 45-minute lecture. This is what you're getting today. Good luck. You're going to get what I got. And then good luck. And we hope you pick it up in the classroom. We hope you just get better at it. What a shocking way to teach teachers. Good luck. I hope you pick it up. Let's not train pilots like that, okay? Let's agree. Let's agree that surgeons should get some kind of degree before they do it. Anyway, teaching is very much about practice. It's a very practical subject in many ways. So, this is my attempt at an evidence base. We visited and spoke to 200 schools and school leaders. We did visits, we did literature reviews, we spoke to academics who were expert in this field. We did round tables of people who had achieved great things with difficult classes in difficult schools. And we also commissioned, and this I think was important for me, we also commissioned a separate entity, a research body, to do the same things we were doing, entirely separately from us, and see what conclusions they came up with. Thank God. Thank God we came together at the end and we were reasonably, in sympathy with one another. Otherwise I would have a very different experience here. So that's why research is important to me. So, one caveat which I'd like to try and point out here. Many of you might be familiar with Dylan William, who is in many ways the godfather of research, and he's spoken for us a couple of times. One of the things he says, which I think is really, really a really good guiding light, nothing works everywhere. When it comes to people, there's no one intervention that works for everybody. Were I to bring a gun out right now and start popping caps into the ceiling, most people would start running. There's a general premise there, but some people wouldn't. Some people would be tweeting it. This is amazing, look. Bang, bang, bang. And some people would be running towards you, and some people would be bringing their guns out and saying, hey, let's do it. Let's do this. So we have to be very careful. And it's very important when you're making pronouncements about you should do this in the classroom, that you're incredibly sensitive to that. That you don't say, you must all do this. This one thing will work. Go you and do likewise. It's very important. Similarly, when you do say this works, what you should be looking for, as I said at the start of the day, is this will probably work with most students in this circumstance. That's also very important too. Okay, so that's one of my favourite caveats. Now, headlines. And I have Oliver Cabiglio to thank for this, because he convinces me to put my headlines right at the start. Number one, most schools and classrooms make the mistake of simply reacting to misbehaviour. They wait for misbehaviour to occur and then react to it. It's not an unreasonable thing to do if you haven't been trained particularly well. I mean, what else do you know to do? But it's not a good strategy. You need to be able to do it, but you need so much more. The more effective schools proactively taught students how to behave really well. That, for me, was the penny dropping moment. And then, once they did that, they also had effective reactive mechanisms. Okay? That's it. Honestly, that's it. That's my career is over. That's all I've got for you. That's my one thing. You can have it for free. Now, when I went into a classroom, I went in, just tried to teach, and waited for them to misbehave. And misbehave they did. Misbehave they did. It was like Battle Royale. If you've seen that film, it was like the Hunger Games, and I was the tribute. That worked really well in the Netherlands. I must remember that. Hunger Games jokes work well in the Netherlands. Right. So, just to clarify, teach them how to behave and then react effectively when they behave. And that's been great. Thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed my speech. Hope you enjoyed my TED Talk. Okay, let me try and expand upon that slightly. First of all, I want to introduce to you, I want to mention to you the concept of culture. Now, forgive me, any sociologists in the room. By culture, I simply mean the shared beliefs and values of a community, of a group. And these things are never homogeneous. There's always subcultures within larger cultures in general. But we can reasonably say that culture exists. And there's a culture in this room, and there's a culture in lifts, and there's a culture outside, a Dutch culture and a British culture, which is mostly suicidal at the moment. And we have lots of other cultures. You go into a lift in Canada, and it's almost compulsory to talk about your children. People will embrace strangers, because they're so friendly and garrulous. And you try that in the United Kingdom, people would rather shoot themselves in the thigh than speak to a stranger, which I'm very proud of, incidentally. Very proud of that. You know, cultures are different. And these are the kind of expectations we have. Now, crucially, the schools and classrooms that do wonderful things with students tend to be the ones that try to become the conscious architects of classroom culture. They think to themselves, how can we design the culture of this room in this space? Caveat emptor. You cannot completely control the culture of your classroom, but you can make a difference to it. You can attempt to set standards, you can attempt to teach people what you think is useful and valuable, beautiful and or true. It doesn't mean steamrolling their culture. It doesn't mean saying what you do at home is bad. It doesn't mean what you do in your street is bad or in your community is bad. It doesn't mean that. It simply means there's a culture here. And it's a culture of uncontroversial dignity, trust, compassion, effort, altruism. Hopefully these are non-controversial things. But these are things these are values upon which communities are based. Okay? But these cultures require constant creation. It's not juggling or an area. It only exists as long as somebody is creating it. If you decide not to create a culture, if you think, I'm not going to create a culture for this room, a culture will exist anyway. I'm going to suggest it will probably be suboptimal. Unless you're teaching the children of Swiss diplomats or something. Maybe you are. Maybe you are. So, teachers and school leaders, and I love this because honestly you can pitch this to both levels, need to decide what do we value, what are we trying to promote here, what kind of room do I want, what kind of school do I want to have, and then teach the children what those values are. Because I tell you what's really interesting, is that we very frequently overestimate the ability of students to know how to self-regulate. We very frequently overestimate the ability of students to understand how to act in different circumstances. Why? I think it's because very frequently we ourselves are quite good at behaving. You know? Most people are adults here, most people have got some kind of degree of education. Most people are good at sitting still and listening and focusing. Well, fancy that. Focusing is hard. Listening is hard. Is that one of the things we're really trying to change isn't just people's behaviour, it's their habits. And here's the difference. A lot of my metaphors involve guns. I'm so sorry. I could pull a gun out right now and point it at you and get you all to start singing the national anthem, which I quite like. Please don't at this stage. I could change your behaviour quickly, but I can't change your habits unless you all form a choir or something. Habits are what we want to try and change with students. We want to help them acquire healthy habits where they have optimal behaviour. And what do I mean by good behaviour? I simply mean behaving in a way that they flourish as scholars and as human beings. Good behaviour does mean sitting still and being quiet sometimes. Absolutely it does. Make no apologies for that. And sometimes it requires active participation, enthusiasm, speaking loudly, being honest. It's knowing when to speak and when not to speak. Now, some of that sounds like compliance. I know compliance is a very dirty word for many people. I think to some level, you do need certain levels of compliance. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old son, which is why I look incredibly haggard. As I always say, I'm actually 22. And I love them very, very dearly. I do expect some level of compliance from them. And as they grow into maturity and adulthood, and as they can handle autonomy and independence, I expect them to use it. And that's a stepped, staggered state. And it's the same with children. So, let me see if I can move on from that. Let me tell you how we do this. First of all, you convey culture by demonstrating culture. You have to let them know what you mean by good behaviour. A lot of children don't know what your view of good behaviour is. And why should they? Why should they understand what your interpretation of good behaviour is? Education is full of these words that mean a million things to a million people. If I said to you, I need you to be punctual, that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, doesn't it? We all have that friend That friend who thinks that being punctual means, you know, as long as you're within 10 or 15 minutes, plus or minus, then you're on time. We've all got students like that who will slope into your classroom, dragging their leg behind them, in a cloud of powder and paint, on their phone, saying, yeah, I'm just walking into the lesson now, yeah. And they think they're on time. I don't know what your view of on time means. You have to define what on time means for students, for example. Whatever their age, you have to define what good behaviour means. If you say to a class of pupils, I need you to behave, half of them are thinking, well, what do you mean by that? What is behave? My father, taxi driver for 35 years. Love the man. Still with us, thank God. One of the world's best taxi drivers, obviously. The world's worst driving instructor, I assure you. Because he's so bloody good at driving, he couldn't explain it to me. He couldn't verbalise it. He's not a teacher. Why should he be? He's a getaway driver. And my hero. And because he couldn't explain it to me, why couldn't he explain it to me? Because he was so good at it. I think sometimes we're like that with children. We can behave. A lot of them haven't been taught. We need to teach them. Like it's a curriculum. We focus so much on I need you to learn about, you know, the kings of Norway or whatever. I don't know why you teach. Is it the kings of Norway? Why not? They're fascinating. Mathematics. You have mathematics here, right? No. Okay. So we focus very much on that, and I think something at the expense of the invisible curriculum, the social curriculum, making sure that every child can access the learning in an equitable way by helping them develop the social skills that enable them to do so. Rather than assuming they've all got these skills already. You're good to go. You are the ideal learner already. No, we need to teach them these skills. Just in the same way we need to teach them phonetics, or number bonds, or arithmetic so they can do algebra, or algebra so they can do trigonometry. You don't start at trigonometry. You don't start at geometry. You start at the start. It's the same with behaviour. I tell you who's really good at this, normally. Teachers of very young children, do you call it early years? What would you call it in the Netherlands? Okay. We've all learned something there. Often teachers of children with special behavioural needs, because you have to really think, how do I get you to tie your shoelaces, and so on and so forth. Teachers of children in challenging circumstances frequently think about this a lot. Teachers in high schools and secondary schools very frequently, in my experience, assume that children have this package. Why can't you behave? They don't have the habits yet. I'm not excusing them, incidentally. I'm not saying it's okay for them. We should just let them off if they tell you to go F yourself. What I am saying is we should understand, what is the habitual reaction? What has their life been up to this point? I think it's useful. Here's how you do it. So I may as well tell you how I think good, effective classrooms and schools do it. Number one, social norms. Read that for a second. I'm really bad at talking over slides. See, even now. Okay, so number one, the power of social norms. Now, there has been a lot of research done into social norms, normative messaging. The idea that we can communicate to people what normal is a very powerful idea that we can use in classrooms and schools. Because people are glued to norm. Glued is the wrong word. People gravitate towards social norms. It has an enormous appeal to us. We very frequently look to other people to pick up social cues in order to dictate what our own behaviour should be. And the best thing is we do this at an unconscious level. We don't really think about it too much. We just kind of start jogging along in the way other people are walking. I mean, a great example of this is the fire alarm. Do you have fire alarms here? Right. I never want to assume. The fire alarm goes off, and in my experience, what normally happens is this, is that the teacher looks at the pupils, and then the pupils look at the teacher, and everyone's kind of shrugging their shoulders thinking, is that a real fire alarm? And then the teacher leans into the corridor, and there's somebody else leaning into the corridor. Is that a fire alarm? I don't know. What do you think? What are you doing? I don't know. Like they're ordering in a restaurant. What are you having? I don't know, what are you having? Why do we ask that? I want to know what you're having first. No, you tell me. No, I don't know. What are we watching? I don't care. Let's just set the fire alarm off. Right? Behaviour normalises. When you see other people doing it, it's a very strong pull. Does it make you behave in a certain way? No. Does it force you to behave in a certain way? No. Does it attract you towards behaving that way? Yes. You join a motorway, you join a road, and people are driving on one side of the road, you'll probably follow them. Well, it's only a brave soul that goes down the autobahn at 150 miles an hour saying, to hell with your rules. I mean, there are outliers in terms of behaviour. We teach them. But most people want to fit in. And here's a lovely paradox about not just teenagers and younger children, but human beings. You may know some. The paradox is this, is that we all want to stand out and we all want to fit in. We all want to fit in. And we all want to stand out, but we all want to fit in. Now, when I was at school, because I am old, we had goths at school. Did you have goths? Yes. You did. There's some in the rafters right now. Drinking blood. Now, there's a couple of goths at my school, and they were the outliers. You know, they were the controversialists, the outliers, walking about, shambling around, hiding in shadows and so on. But guess what? They all hung out together. People want to stand out, and they want to fit in. We all look for our tribe. We look for our groups. We look for social groups that reassure us, that comfort us, that socially groom us. This is normal. This is natural. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that we should be trying to set norms for children. Consciously, explicitly, repetitively. This is normal behaviour. This is good behaviour here. At this school, I expect you to. In my class, we do this. In this class, we don't hit people. Language like that, for a start, that's how you can start to create norms. And we might think, oh, this is obvious. Of course we don't hit people or shout at people and so on. No, tell them explicitly. They might know what you think. No, sorry. They might know what good behaviour is, but they need to know that you know. They want to know what you think good behaviour is. So you start to set the norm. And the most obvious way that teachers and schools do this is by communicating a set of principles or rules or something like that. You know, in this classroom we put our hand up and so on and so forth. And here's the interesting thing. We frequently set norms but don't maintain those norms. Now I wonder if you've ever done this. And those of you that are teachers, I wonder if you've ever done this. So you say to something like, when did World War II begin? And little Billy shouts out, 1939, sir. Now, here's what's very frequently happens. See if you do this. The teacher goes, Billy, what did we say about shouting out? But yes, it was 1939. That's right. You see what's happening. You see what's happening, don't you? You just normalised that behaviour. You said don't do it, but when push came to shove, Billy got everything he wanted out of that interaction. He got status. He got esteem. He got his friends looking at him thinking, he's really cool, wow, he breaks all the rules. I want to be like Billy. And all the kids with their hands up, what did they learn? They learned a different lesson, don't put your hand up. If you want to get heard in this class, you shout. You've reinforced exactly the opposite of the behaviour you didn't want to reinforce. You've normalised poor behaviour. And it matters. Why? Because there's quiet kids who want to speak. Because there's kids there who are scared to speak. Because there are kids there who might not have great language skills, or they might be speaking in a different language that they want to speak to. These things matter. I'm not saying you should always insist on hands up. I'm saying when you need it, you need it. Not because you need it, because they need it. There's a great line, what you permit, you promote. What you permit, you promote, because you've normalised it. Of course, what a good teacher should do, because some of you are thinking, well, what should you do then? I can sense it off you in waves. Very simple. When did World War II start? Billy shouts out, 1939, sir. And then you do a nice soft, hands up please. Hands up please. It could be eye contact, it could be a little hand down. You could knock the desk. Little proximity warning. Hands up please. Hands up, Oliver please. And then you say, Jasmine, 1939, brilliant. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's synthetic, we've had the answer already. The point is, you're not trying to find out the answer. You know when World War II started. You know, it's not like, damn it, Billy spoiled it now. Gosh. Spoiler alert, it was 1939. No, the point is you're trying to use answering and questioning as a diagnostic tool, as a way of encouraging, as a motivation, whatever. There's lots of reasons why you question. And what you've done is you've normalised the hand up. And then you say, well done, Jasmine. Billy, I need to speak to you after school. Or see me in 10 minutes, or whatever. You keep the flow going. And you let the rest of the room know that wasn't normal. That's not what they should be doing. That's a small example. Good practitioners do this kind of stuff all the time. But guess what? I want all practitioners to be thinking about these kind of nuts and bolts all the time, because I think it's essential. I think we overlook these tiny little nuggets of how we promote norms. Okay. So that's one way to do it. Number 2 is routines. Now, routine is simply a sequence of behaviour, or behaviour, because behaviour is an uncountable noun. So I'm told. In English, anyway. So it's a taught sequence of behaviour. Like a fire drill. A fire drill is a routine. What you do? Do this, then do this, then do this. And here's exactly how I want you to do it. That's a routine. Oh, and incidentally, I want you to do that in the same circumstances pretty much all the time. Routines are essential. They are essential for the way we operate with one another. I know, for example, that when I put a hand out, somebody shakes it. Somebody knows that's the routine. If you say hello or Morgan, somebody says hello or Morgan back. If somebody puts up the hand for a high five, you leave them hanging. That's the routine, and that's always funny, right? Always funny. When you're driving in a car, I don't know what it's called over here, but the highway code, I presume you have a highway code here, a driving code. That's a complex set of routines. Laws are a complex set of routines. We will do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. And it's an agreement between everyone else. It's a kind of contract. Again, these are the type of things that need to be taught. Do you think that a 4-year-old automatically knows how to begin a lesson? I didn't. So if you're finding that your 4-year-olds are coming in with unruly behaviour, like they've just, run off a Formula 1 racetrack or something, as they do, then the kindest thing to do, the most efficient thing to do is say, right, we are now going to learn how to start a lesson. And you might think, oh God, man, Mr. Bennett, that is so unchill of you. You are so boring. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. These things are boring. They are mundane and they are essential. Bricks are boring, but bricks make walls and walls make houses. Walls make beautiful things. Oh God, that sounded very Trumpian, didn't it? God! Have a bath. Sorry. It's going to be the best wall. It's going to be great. Anyway, right. So routines, and we need to train them. They don't know how to begin lessons. Guess what? When I used to teach older kids, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and I would say to them, we're going to write an essay today. They didn't know how to write an essay. I barely know how to write an essay. When I write essays, there's an art, there's a skill, there's a craft to it. There's certainly something you can impart and train people in. Here's how we're going to start lessons. Where else do you need routines? You probably need to have a departure routine. Beginnings and ends, the most important part of the lesson to my mind. Like a novel, like a chapter. You do a lot of work, beginnings and endings. You need to have a routine about how to transition from one activity to the next activity. You need to practice that. Physically practice it. Rather than saying, why am I always waiting for you to turn around when you've been doing a paperwork activity and now I want you to do a discussion activity. I'm always waiting for 5 minutes, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I became Dracula there. Blah, blah, blah. Teach them. Teach them because they need teaching. And you might think, oh my God, this is so micro-obsessional, this is micromanaging the behaviour. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Managing the behaviour, running the room, running the school, requires a hell of a lot of effort on you to create a routine, to create a culture. It is not natural. It's not natural to sit at a desk and do trigonometry at 9 o'clock on Friday morning, unless you love it. I'm going to suggest that's a subset of the population. Right? Sitting still and focusing on something you're not particularly keen on is unnatural. We're naturally quite egotistical. You know, we like to do what we like to do. I don't think that's controversial. I don't think it means that we're bad. I just think it makes us human. And children are more human than most. The routines. The use routines. Normally I find in schools and in classrooms, if there's a gap between the behaviour you'd like and the behaviour you have, that probably needs a routine. That needs a taught routine. And I literally mean we're going to practice how to, I don't know, line up outside a classroom or something like that. And I mean do it. And define it. Don't be vague, be concrete. Children need that reification process. Otherwise they'll define it for themselves. It's like you saying don't be late. What does late mean? What does late mean? Particularly in schools that have got ambiguous bells or no bells. Do you have them lining up outside the classroom? Some shake, some no, some do, some. It doesn't matter to me. You might want to just get them straight in and get them onto some work, in which case they need a beginning routine. Here's what you do when you come to my room. You don't just tell them, practice it. And there's one thing we know about learning. There's one thing we know about learning, is it's incredibly hard to learn anything unless you repeat it and practice it and consolidate it over time. We know this. If you're teaching children for an exam, you don't just teach them at the start of the year, then at the end of the year say good luck. You practice, you revise, you use the knowledge, you revisit it. It's exactly the same with a golf swing, with learning a guitar, with changing your behaviour. You have to revisit the behaviour, the new behaviour you're trying to acquire. So make them do it again, and again, and again. It can't be dull. It can be exciting. Depends on how you deliver it. Doesn't matter to me. The investment is worth what you reap. You get an enormous dividend of behaviour as you go along. Children know this room is structure, this room is routines. I need these routines because it wasn't important. They save time. They save an enormous amount of time. Rather than you constantly saying, why am I still waiting for you to put your pens down? You know, if you've got kids doing a writing task, and then you have a set signal, like you chat, or you say stop, or move, or whatever, everyone pens down. Pens down is one of the most powerful things you can get kids to do. Pens down. It's like phones down. If you have phones in your classroom, in which case there's no hope for you. No words, is there? It deters people from breaking the rules because they know what the rules are. I know that sounds obvious, but if you don't explicitly say to children, these are the expectations, this is what I need from you, then don't be surprised if they step over the lines that you never drew in the first place. Don't be surprised if they don't know what you expect them to do if you don't tell them what you expect. You see, it provides social norms. So, routines are also a way of providing normative messaging. Oh, and let's go backwards. Let's not do it. Crucially, it frees up thinking space. And this is where I guess it ties into things like cognitive load theory and so on. It's a sense of, if you want people to be thinking every day, how shall I enter this classroom? Then good luck to you. I don't want them thinking about it. I want them thinking less. Yeah, I want them thinking less about that stuff. I want them doing it automatically. I don't wake up in the morning and think, how shall I brush my teeth today? Should I use my elbows? Maybe that would be fun. No. I have got a routine. Your morning routine is normally quite automatic, isn't it? And we usually fall back on routines when we're not sure what we should be doing. Sure, of course. Yeah, that's a really good point. We know a lot about adolescent behaviour. We know a lot about adolescent development. We know that, for example, impulsivity massively spikes between 12 and 18. Recklessness massively spikes between 12 and 18. Rejection of authority spikes between... we know all this. This is the human story. And we mustn't act surprised about it. However, we still don't give into it and say, oh, well, they're naturally rebellious. We'll never help them. We just have to curb before them. We still try. And they trip, they fall, they fail. We pick them up, we help them. And if someone fails to do a routine, the first question I say to them is, do you understand what we need to be doing just now? Rather than, how dare you, you terrible, awful person. No, I want to ask, do they know what they need to do? Because very frequently the resistance to changing your behaviour is caused by the inability to know what to do. Very frequently. And people feel insecure. I don't know what's expected of me, so I shall rebel, I shall act up. And incidentally, we see the same thing with teachers. Very frequently, the head teacher of a school will say to their staff, you need to raise behaviour in your classrooms. You need to get more respect from your children in your classrooms. Like, that's an actual thing you can think about. What they need are concrete examples. The first thing I always say when I'm coaching teachers is, do you know what you need to be doing? Do you know how to have a difficult conversation with a challenging parent? Let's work through it. Let's try it. Let's train it. Always support people and assume that maybe they just understand or they have trouble with the habit rather than you dreadful, terrible person. And I find that kind of warmth, that kind of sincerity, that dignity goes much further with everybody, let alone children. And routines become habits. The more you perform a routine, the more it becomes internalised. And habits, this is very Aristotelian, those of you who enjoy a bit of virtue ethics. Habits become character. And you've done something very important. You haven't just taught them something which they have to remember. You've changed them as a person. You've helped them to become more punctual. You've helped them to become more charitable or braver or to persevere more with difficult tasks or whatever. But you've created a different habit. People can change their habits. I gave up smoking 5 years ago when my daughter was born. Most stressful period of my life. And I acquired a biscuit habit instead, which is a nicer habit by far, but also quite challenging. You can change those habits too. It's very hard. But that doesn't mean you just give up. I'm just going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. Sorry. Because finally, the last thing we do is we have to have effective behaviour response mechanisms in classrooms. It's weird enough, this is the first thing people ask me about in the UK. What punishment would you set if a child did this? Now listen, I am pro-sanction. I am pro-rewards. I know it's a very kind of behaviourist approach. It's only part of the human equation, but it is part of the human equation. We can be, or many of us can be deterred and attracted towards certain behaviours by rewards and other motivations like that. Is it the whole human story? Absolutely not. Are there some people that don't give a damn about any sanction you set? Yes, there are. Yes, there are. Because behaviour also exists in a bell curve. There will be outliers at one end who'll never do what you ask them to do. They don't care. And you could set them a sanction every day. You could give them the cane if you existed in 1932 or something. And they wouldn't care. There are some children that don't respond to sanctions. Those children require a much deeper therapeutic approach. What I'm proposing here is that for the vast, vast majority of children in a mainstream circumstance, social norms, routines, and healthy reactive mechanisms are normally the trinity you're looking for to get a good deal of good behaviour from children. And when I frequently go to classrooms in schools where the behaviour is poor, one of those three or more of them are not operating particularly well. I should say, for example, in terms of sanctions, if you're setting a sanction, I don't know what sanctions you're allowed to have in the Netherlands. You go to Sweden and you're not allowed to do anything. You're not even allowed to glare at them. You can get arrested for it. It's very different. But in the UK, we set detentions and we ask them to pick up litter and really kind of low level stuff. Sanctions work best in high trust environments when children are certain they're going to happen. Sanctions actually are reasonably effective at deterring low level misbehaviour and preventing it from getting to high level misbehaviour. Because a lot of what I talk about here is preventative. Yeah, you catch them early rather than letting the behaviours exacerbate. Sanctions are very ineffective in low trust environments, where one teacher sets a sanction, but another teacher doesn't. Yeah? It really makes me mad. Because the more I teach, the more I train about behaviour, the more I see how much every teacher's behaviour impacts on every other teacher's behaviour. In the UK, most schools have a no mobile phone policy, which I think is probably sensible, if I'm honest, except in certain circumstances. But if that's the policy in the school, and you're the teacher that just lets them away with it occasionally, because you know you're the cool teacher. Yeah. Kids think you're cool. You want to be cool. Kids never think you're cool. Kids never, ever, ever think you're cool. They're older than 21, they think that you listen to Frank Sinatra and you voted for Roosevelt. It's just, forget it. Never try. Never, never try. They will never admit you to their tribe, nor should you wish them to. That would be a weird thing to do. So if you're the teacher that lets them off, if you're the maverick, you have robbed the authority of the person next door who's trying to take the mobile phone off kids. In fact, not just that, you've made it more likely that kids will try and get mobile phones out of classrooms. Because you permitted it, you promoted it. So if there is a whole school set of principles, no matter what it doesn't matter to me what they are. I've seen lots and lots of different principles. You go to Sweden and it's all high fives and hugs and first names of teachers. And you go to Singapore, it's 18-hour days, classes of 100 and so on. It's different cultures can often be quite effective. I don't think there's a certain particular type of school which necessarily is the universal school. I love plurality in education. I love different types of schools, different types of children. What I would say is, if you have got what we would call a red line, a non-negotiable in a school, everybody has to stick to it. That's what we call a high-trust environment. And when staff make up their own rules in every different room, it's not so much that it confuses the children, but the children realise that there's no real cultural boundaries. The school doesn't have a character. You've just got lots of different rooms. One teacher might let you away with something, one teacher might not. Consistency, I know you hear this a lot, consistency is incredibly important. Oh, ooh. I think we're going over time.
Yes.
Well, you'll never find out with the invisible ladder of consequence. How will you ever get good behaviour? You'll never know about the purpose of behaviour feedback and the importance of multiple feedbacks. You'll never know that. I'll let you down. What I will say is that make sure your sanctions are consistent. Make sure you realise that everything you do is feedback on their behaviour. They are constantly picking up messages from you. Now, you don't have to just punish and reward them, obviously. You might want to instruct them. They might have a literacy issue. They might have a difficulty going on at home. They might have a neurological problem that hasn't been identified. They might be going through some kind of trauma. This kind of diagnostic work is also important, particularly where misbehaviour presents as a pattern. But I will say something which is still a little bit controversial, which is that I still think that in mainstream schools, the vast majority of misbehaviours are just mucking about. Are just kids being kids. There's no sinister, dark, deep, mysterious reason why one kid threw a pen at another kid. You don't have to call the adults the educational psychologist. Sometimes you do, which is the pinweed answer. Which is why we try to observe patterns of behaviour as well as instances of behaviour. We try to observe habits as well as just behaviour. So yes, sometimes it does need a nurture group, a removal, the social services, whatever. There's lots of different responses, but you can have lots of responses in your response. I will end on one story, which is that I used to have a pupil, 15 years old. He was a bit rough and tough, and he was a problem for many teachers. He behaved for me, and I know I hate it when people say he behaved for me. You're actually allowed to hit someone with a frying pan if they say that to you. Well, he behaves for me. Fine. But he behaved for me. One day, a new pupil came to school, and I said to him, could you walk on the left-hand side of the corridor, because that was our rule. Could you walk on the left-hand side, please? And he went, why don't you go yourself? He didn't censor himself like I did. And my little chum, the first person I spoke about, just walked over to him and went, bam! Right in the kisser. Strawberry jam everywhere. laid him down. And I said to him, go on, one more time. No, I said to him, turning the camera. No, sorry. Dark humour, I apologise. I was instrumental in having the first boy excluded, removed from school for like a few weeks. Because you mustn't do that. That's assault. You can be arrested for that, right? At the same time, at his reintegration meeting, I also acknowledged what I thought he was trying to do for me. He was trying to express loyalty. He was trying to express some kind of sense of, fidelity to my classroom. I got it, I get it. From where he's coming from, he was doing me a favour. So your response can be complex. There's a sanction, there's a removal, there's an educational psychologist. Let's get your parents in. But I also respect what you thought you were trying to do for me. You've got to acknowledge these types of things, otherwise, because you just go, well, he hates me and the relationship's gone and so on. Your response could be complex. And on that, with those three things, and with no time for questions, which is just the way I like it. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.